theory being used to test and experiment on people. This is a concept that you find in conspiracy theories all over the internet, along with new math and other things that will cause people to be triggered. But this is going to be a little bit different. At one time, people objected to phonics. Some of you may be old enough to remember the word phonics being used as a buzzword back before we called it that. So we're going to be talking about the history of another method that may or may not be something you're aware of. It wasn't the late 1960s. When someone says something as recent, and I'm saying this, as recent as something in the last 100 years, where they refuse to give you the time and date stamp for something, they're hiding it, or someone went to a great deal of trouble to hide who caused it, because someone did not want to be blamed for something that will end up being a historically terrible thing. Someone did not want to take the blame. Watching videos of teachers telling kids to stop figuring out what a word means by sounding it out. A philosophy, if anybody's not aware of this, if somebody gets a PhD and claims that they can predict the path of a comet and then tells you to be scared and give them money on Patreon, and you find out the PhD meaning philosophy, that doesn't mean they're a doctor in medical or any other thing. They're just a philosopher. That means less than bullshit, in my opinion, unless they're just covering philosophy. The philosophy of language and reading, based on the premise, assumption, that since learning to speak develops naturally, learning to read comes naturally to humans. And it's very centric to the English language. And quinkadinkly gets applied to people who can't speak English and have a hard time reading it. Now, some of you of a particular political bent are going to chuckle because that's part of the plan. Because you really think monologuing while doing the moo-ha-ha makes you look good. It's a discredited educational method for teaching, you keep using fancy words, reading, in any language, much less English, that was popular in the 1980s and 90s. In the United States, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, basically all these countries decided to switch over. Thank God I wasn't actually being taught this anywhere I was. It never had any scientific support, and studies show that it doesn't work, and continue to do so. And only 10 states in the United States are requiring that you stop doing this. What exactly is this? Okay, 1967. Yes, it's a specific year, not the late 1960s. I'm not that old. We don't round things off and saying, in the previous millennium, oh, for fuck's sake, it's 1967. Shut up. I'm sorry. You're making me feel old here. Anyway, a psycholinguistic theory by reading experts believing that, again, assumption, readers predict that words mean something using cues. The context of this I'm leaving out, but you already got a hint of it. They use the cue of meaning, syntax, and visual cues for reading. See also, just reading a book with no pictures, nothing else in it. There's no filigrees or drawings in the corners. It's just words. So the three cues here are reduced down because you don't have a visual cue. The meaning and syntax will be dependent on you knowing enough of the words to be able to figure out the others. I'm going to explain this to you. I do language-based decoding of fucking computer languages. Okay, this is a real-world thing where I'm looking at something written in somebody's torqued-up version of Fortran. Assembly code. Oh, wow, I have to translate. Code that's used to tell a computer how to build a real program is often done in what looks like a word language. It's not a language, but I'm used to reading this horse shit and being able to find meaning in it. And I know using the word visual for decoding something that's purely text is stupid. What about syntax? Syntax error? And then finally, the meaning. If you're learning a language, you don't have the meaning of any of the words, so how are you supposed to get the syntax or structure-based figuring out of what the words mean? You can't. Now, I'm going to say it out loud. This was applied to people who don't speak English, who come from languages where literally the words are written in the opposite direction, where page numbers go the other way, where it goes from bottom to top in some cases. Or they are languages where if you translate it directly, it sounds like Yoda talking. Kick your ass, I will. I'm not kidding. There's a couple of languages like that. Most of you know about which ones I'm talking about. Some of you complain about people from countries that speak it. And some of those languages are the origin story for half the fucking languages on the planet. It's a very American and English and British-centric theory that everybody should naturally be able to figure out how to speak English because that's the right way to speak. Please see also the Scottish, the Gaelic, everybody else, including in Britain. Did I mention Scottish and Britain? Yeah, they would like to have a word with you. There might be a shillelagh involved. So let's get this done. It's discredited. It never worked. And it was garbage from 1980 forward. And it was created in 1967, not, quote, the late 60s. That's technically correct. A theory done by a philosophy person who does language turned into how you teach people. Okay, now I've trashed it enough. I'm going to put up the word teacher. It's the first word. Teachers telling kids to stop sounding out words. Let's sound out the word. T-E-A-K-E-R-S. Teachers. Teachers? That's close. It's teachers because the C and H are from a completely different language where they use C and H to make ch. Oh. And now you know that sometimes if you see C and H, that's ch. Why does it say T-E-A? Because the word T is spelled T-E-A, so we use T. That's not the correct answer, but it's the origin story for both of those sections using the same letters if you're not aware of it. No, it really is. So it's teach, and then E-R-S means teachers, and then now we're going to do context. Teach means to teach, to transfer knowledge and educate a person or simply assisted it, and ERS is a code word for the plural version of people who do it. So to teach is an action, teacher is a person who does it, and teachers is more than one person. Teachers telling the kids to stop sounding out words. Why do we sound out words? I know some of you out there who might have been put through the hell of this kind of language training. It's not language training. This is, I'm not kidding, the only place this philosophy of figuring out things from pictures, while you're reading nothing but text, but figuring out from context, syntax, meaning, and other cues. Artificial intelligence is the only thing that's ever benefited from this because it guesses. The thing is, AI routines guess 1 billion guesses per minute and then can double check themselves without being told not to sound out words. This is the methodology that AI routines use to scan billions of books that aren't just text files. They convert what's on the screen, drawn out, and guess at the letters. That's the only example where this philosophy ever worked. Because the fuckers that came up with this, Frank Smith and Ken Goodman, etc., et al., lots of other people jumped on this crazy train, are cited for AI purposes. So the only thing that ever benefited from this is literally one of our major enemies in our society, artificial intelligence. Lovely golf clap moment. Congratulations, assholes. You not just played yourselves, you played the rest of humanity. Thanks. Did this help anybody? Consistently, people weren't able to read because they were taught that reading should come naturally because the English language is the best language. To people exclusively who were having trouble reading because they didn't speak English as a primary language. Okay, all of you get to be forced to do kanji. It's literally a symbol-based language, but it has phonetics in it. I would dig these guys up, resuscitate them, resurrect them, and force them to fucking learn Chinese and Japanese against their will, and hook them up to, some sort of a negative reinforcement, like a taser, every time they get something wrong. I'm sure it'll work out beautifully. Because haranguing a kid for them looking at the word teachers and sounding it out and being able to read was punished. You punished them for trying to read. You can watch lots of examples of this. Teachers saying, stop sounding it out. I remember a teacher with me. I had trouble in my first grade because I had a teacher that literally caused anxiety attacks. I lost the ability to do calculus, which I did as a hobby because I found a calculus book and read it. I was taught how to read at a young age. And this teacher got me so screwed around that I couldn't do math anymore or read. Because this teacher, no, it wasn't caused by this, simply browbeat me. And this person was literally run out of on a rail. I mean, literally, they threatened literally to get a railroad tie or a rail and actual goddamn tar and feathers. They were going to do it to her. And I won't say her name, but she was drummed out of the educational system that year and charged with abuse. Bad teachers happen once in a while. I'm lucky that I've only had 3 in my life. The rest of them were awesome. I got lucky. Because it was a poor town and the only people who would go there were either abusive bastards, which didn't last long, or people who just wanted you to learn. That's it. But let's get back to the main story. Doing a interpretation, presumption, assumptions, and then when you get information that says you're wrong, you would just ignore it and keep steamrolling it? That's not science. So why is this all bullshit? Okay, here's the wording. In the English language, reading left to right, when you read it, is an audio recording. It's a symbolic writing of the sounds coming out of a person's mouth. Then we standardized it because at one time it was always the way the person talked. When you wrote down what a person said, you were writing down the sounds coming out of their mouth. If they had a weird, there's an example of someone figuring out what a particular dialect in Scotland sounded like. There's more than one, by the way the person wrote it out while he was trying to figure out what the person said. And as he progressed, he wrote it down and said, well, it's standardized written this way. And he's like, yeah, and, dags. And the, go watch Snatch. But the point is, he phonetically recorded what the guy said, so we know what the words sounded like. And they're mind-bogglingly bad. I mean, you already know some examples on the internet of this. You know, that's why the AI can't decode you if you speak Scottish or Irish or any other pirate-based language. I call them pirate instead of Latin languages. But here we go. The written language in English is a time-signatured-based phonetic language. We use consonants, vowels, and syllables. The syllables are points at which our words chop up into distinctive sounds. Point, at, which. Sand, which. It's a natural occurrence because of the way we speak. We chop up words this way. Then there's German where they string everything together and it just sounds like a blur. Like Rap God by Eminem, or Eminem. I call him Eminem because the way Eminem's written out could be interpreted as Eminem or enema. It's subject to interpretation. We get some humor out of it. But by having the embarrassment of mispronouncing Eminem's name, because it's Eminem, sorry, like millennium, we learn the correct spellings and stuff. There are exceptions to these rules. Virtually the entire language uses phonetics. Because it's a recording of the sounds coming out of your mouth, not a concept. The word premise with a lowercase e, premise, it's premise. The e is silent. Why the fuck is it there? Primis, premise, or prem. Okay, it has to have an e, so it's premise. But why is the e at the end? To make it harder to spell? Or is that the correct spelling? Did I get it wrong? Did you have to go read and look it up? Our language is based on us starting off with a verbal language and then trying to interpret it into spelling and then using it from 14 different languages at minimum in the English language last time I looked up. That's it. That's my entire opinion on this. I found this amazing that somebody would do this. Something I've seen only used to torture an AI routine trying to learn was done to children for a couple of decades. That should make you angry. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And if you're on a school board, don't let this ever happen again.